Hi there, this is Kayvon and Kevin, parts of Katie, also co-conscious with Cassandra and some other parts. And we're here to talk about what's going on with us in our deprogramming in our system right now. We're hoping to make this helpful to others, but do want to give a warning that this is probably going to be really triggering for survivors of mind control. We're sorry if the title is activating, but we wanted to let people know right up front what we are going to be doing, what we're going to be talking about. So, like the title says, we are going inside the Demented Circus inner worlds to deprogram. We've done this before, but we're doing it on a new level. Right now, we are in an inner world, kind of partially between this world and that world, in which it's nighttime and we're at a carnival. It's a demented carnival focused on violence of extreme natures, and we're staring into the face of the figure of Uncle Sam. We come from an underground military child trafficking ring called Uncle Sam's Snuff Factory. And so Uncle Sam was a huge figure in our MK Ultra programming. I think that many other survivors of American government mind control could relate to the use of that figure, but we specifically relate to it because that was part of the actual facility that we grew up in, that visual and name. He's been dissolving for a while. We've been looking at him for a while in meditation, and he's been melting away. Pieces of his trauma are coming up, and we're understanding that he's not a he, he's an introject, and that the alter inside him is a little girl about 5 or 6 years old who is programmed to take on his appearance and terrorize us. That we are now older than she is, and we can work with her like she's a child, as that's what she is. We don't have to be terrorized by her image anymore. We're watching lots of structures dissolve and lots of little pieces of trauma come up. We're understanding this inner world to be made up of traumatic memories that have been compartmentalized, and then the compartments in which they're stored have been visualized by parts of our system as aspects of this circus. That there's trauma within every corner of it. That the ground is full of trauma, the sky is full of trauma, the trees are full of trauma, the circus structures are full of trauma, and the figures inside are introjects of alters, as in they're introjects of figures that are actually alters, I mean to say. And that those alters are parts of ourselves, and that there's alter fragments within every structure reliving the trauma. And so we can see the structures deconstruct and instead see this as a mass of dissociated parts stuck in trauma. That takes the power out of it right away. We no longer have to relive this scenario that was created in virtual reality programming, guided imagery, hypnosis from programmers, things like that, staged events where programmers and others dressed up like Uncle Sam and circus freaks and circus clowns and things like that. We don't have to hold on to that anymore. We're going into a section of the programming where there are animals. Again, these are introjects, parts who believe that they are these animals. And to deprogram these parts means to relive trauma right now that involves sexual assault by animals when we were a child. So this is very painful. We're starting to feel sick. Things are starting to deprogram and come up. And we're recognizing that we now have really good containment strategies and are automatically containing the trauma and reliving aspects of it piece by piece. We don't have to get overwhelmed anymore. This used to be so fucking difficult because we would just get flooded the moment we encountered a program. But now we know how to do it bit by bit and regulate. So pieces of sickness are coming up, a lot of body memories, emotion, fear, the feeling of being small, like a toddler. The image of a zebra has come up. Any kind of black and white animal usually has some place in our programming, we found. like zebras or pandas. We have a stuffed panda. Actually, that can be a trigger for us, but he's a pillow rather than the animal, and that eliminates a lot of the triggers, and he's very sweet. We like him. But for a long time, we couldn't have stuffed animals, and we especially couldn't have black and white stuffed animals. So anyways, we're noticing the zebra inside. As you can see, we're kind of between realities because we can talk about stuff that we have in the present day or have had in recent times, and talk about the trauma at the same time. And that's very good. It's good for us to be inhabiting multiple time spaces at once. It means that we're integrating old traumas into our present awareness rather than getting consumed by them. Or at least it's a sign that that's what we're doing. So we're trying to breathe. We drank a little coffee earlier, which was not the best thing, but occasionally we do. We get really sensitive to caffeine. But we're breathing. We have some calm. We're seeing a block around the zebra, and other stuff is flooding us. We're remembering that we just watched some activating material online. Sometimes we feel compelled to show our partner triggering things from our programming. There's stuff on YouTube that's MKUltra related that we sometimes feel compelled to share with our partner. He's our support person, and it can be healing for alters to come forward and show a support person what stuff looked like from our trauma. So while we supported them in doing that and thought that was the right thing, it has affected us and made deprogramming more difficult. But we're seeing that the stuff that we showed him was related to this programming. This might be triggering for people, but I'll mention what the stuff was. We showed him some things from the band Mr. Bungle and a video for a song by the band Nurse with Wound. And the video for Nurse with Wound, that video wow, I get glitchy thinking about it, I'm sorry. It looked like an MKUltra programming tape. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that it very much looked that way to us. It may have been fan-made. It may have been programmer-made. I don't know, but it looked that way. It was very complex for seeming so simple, and it brought some things up for us. We're looking inside, and we're accessing these parts that are triggered, and they're starting to heal. We feel this huge pressure in our stomach rising up into our chest and out the top of our head. And we just saw the visual image of ourselves as a balloon, as a little child about 4 years old, and as a balloon that's like kind of superimposed on our head in a like kind of translucent way. And the balloon is being blown up endlessly and endlessly. But before it pops, something steps in and takes it and restores it back to who we were, restores us from the visual and the programming to ourselves. So a protector part is coming in and saving us from being consumed by the program. I imagine that what's happening is we're reliving a trauma in which we almost got brainwashed completely, but something stepped in and prevented us from being totally subverted by the programming. Hold on, I have to scratch my face, I'm sorry. I don't like doing that, but I have to sometimes because I just know it triggers people, so I don't like it in the videos. So I'm breathing and I'm noticing my surroundings. I'm realizing that I'm wearing some triggering clothing. I'm wearing a dress that's triggering for me under this sweater. I can see it, but you guys can't. That's why we have the sweater. I'm realizing that I'm hot in here. I'm thirsty. So I'm starting to come out of the programming. I think we're putting it aside for now. Other parts are going to work on it. I'm connecting. I'm feeling my feet on the ground. I'm realizing that I really am activated by the caffeine, by the tapes. But I feel that I'm here and that the trauma is over. I really see now that Uncle Sam was just a figure from programming, that it was just something that my programmers did to try and scare me, that it has no bearing on my reality now, that when they were dressed up in costume and torturing me, that was real and that was terrifying. But that what this figure represents doesn't even have to do with the American government as a whole. We have a hard time differentiating the CIA from everyone who is in American government and everyone in the United States in general. And so a big part of our deprogramming is to realize that it's not all this evil, that America is sick, very, very sick. Most everyone here is very spiritually sick, but that not everyone is a child raping murderer, and not everyone who works in government is in line with the CIA's values. So Uncle Sam does not have to be our figure to represent all of the American government and all of the American consciousness. This was something created in our minds by a very small group of very, very demented people. Not everyone as a whole. So we're letting go of our sense that everyone in American government is one and is ruled spiritually by this seemingly evil figure. This means that we get to disidentify from the notion that we are evil by being an American. If we see all Americans, as one entity that is consumed by the worst of what this culture has to offer, then we will see ourselves as the embodiment of MK Ultra evil. And that's just not accurate. Not everyone who's born in this country is bad. Not everyone who has certain American values has all values represented by the worst of American culture. There's a gradient here. There's varying levels. So I'm starting to see that I can find my place in American culture without being reliant on Uncle Sam programming to tell me who I am. At the same time, I can accept the darkest aspects of my nature. I can accept my shadow self and accept that the American shadow is embodied by places like Uncle Sam's Snuff Factory and by MK Ultra programming, and that this does represent the worst aspect of all of us, that we all do share this, we all are one, but we're not one in the way that groups like the Illuminati want people to think. Their sense of oneness is backwards. Their sense of oneness is that we are all a reflection of their narcissistic collective ego. That they have this collective ego that's narcissistic, and that all beings are mirrors of that. That's pathological narcissism, and that's not the oneness spoken of in Buddhism, for example. It's the opposite, actually, and deeply reliant on separation. Deeply at war with itself, in conflict with itself. That there is a sense of oneness, spiritual oneness, that is not the confused, backwards way of thinking that the Illuminati promotes, that groups like it promote. There is a sense of connectivity that we can have, in which we do all recognize that we are reflections of one spirit, not one human ego, not one violent pathology. I had someone on this channel send me a lot of very abusive stuff that all started with a comment telling me that my deprogramming process is not about becoming one, that oneness is the globalism of the elite. I was very confused, and I urge people to not confuse what the satanic elite calls oneness with the actual oneness that we as a species experience. That the oneness a narcissist claims everyone has with themselves and their ego is not the same thing as the oneness that we on a heart level can experience and are experiencing. We just may not always be connected to it completely. Okay, I feel like I got bogged down. I don't know if I'll post all of that part at the end. But yeah, I'm seeing so much deprogramming happening, and I'm going to go and breathe and definitely just try to calm down. Okay, thanks.